Thank you, Mark, and hi, everybody. It's always a treat to be in this um, portable virtual community existing on the world of Bria, the world of the not just the intellect, but the abstract digital world of electronics that connect us all around the world. Um, I kind of love leading these sits. I shouldn't say that because I don't want them to think that I shouldn't get paid for them, but but I would do it for free because it's really a treat to come in this moment. It's the middle of my day, so I'm on Eastern time, and take a break. And not just take a break from, but a break to, just like Shabbat, which Mark mentioned earlier. There's the stopping of doing things, but then that enables other capacities of human life to emerge. And that's definitely true for me in meditation in general, and these sits in particular, coming in the middle of a day and an opportunity to kind of reset and reshift. So today, I wanted to cultivate and direct our hearts toward a quality of mind and heart that is often associated, I would say, with Buddhist teachings and practices, but also maybe less well known, has a very strong Jewish roots as well, which is the quality of hishtavut in Hebrew, or equanimity in English. I think there's a kind of stereotype of certain kinds of Buddhist meditation that it's all about equanimity, which is not really true of Buddhist meditation, and that's a Buddhist thing and not a Jewish thing. We're fiery and we have lots of emotions, and that's true too. But it's really not true of either of these two traditions. It's funny. I used to have on my on a bookshelf, I had a little Buddha statue right next to a statue of a dancing chassid, and that those two images reflected those two parts of my spiritual path, the contemplative part and the kind of joyous theistic devotional part. But hishtavut, or equanimity, is part of Jewish spiritual practice, has been part of Jewish spiritual practice for at least 400 years. It appears in the Shari Kodesh, the Gates of Holiness, by Chaim Vital, the leading disciple and leading transmitter of the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari. And it's an interesting kind of thing to cultivate and to think about, because there's a real fragility to equanimity, which is to say, it very easily, it's never, I don't know if I hesitate to use the word pure, but it's never pure. It's never unmixed with something else, except in very rare moments. So for example, the feeling of equanimity, that you're fine however things are, you're feeling at peace, you're feeling balanced. In the Hebrew, hishtavut has the same root as equal, shaveh, like something's equal. When we actually experience that, which I'm going to invite in just a couple of minutes, there's almost always, like, it's never quite neutral or equal, right? So there can be a real contentment and a joy and a peacefulness of the release into equanimity if you're carrying a burden. So many people, for example, were praying for healing for ourselves and for others in the chat, and those are good things to carry, right? That we want to feel the wishes of of healing for others and for ourselves. But also, when we put the burden down for a moment, there can be a moment of joy, a very subtle joy, just mixed in with the equanimity. On the converse side, sometimes when we think we're feeling equanimity, there's little bits of despair or resignation or pessimism or giving up. And I'm not judging any of those things, just like we're not judging the bits of hope and joy and emotion that are on the positive side of the ledger. Just noticing that the actual balance of equanimity is maybe a little bit more like the tree of life, the Sphirot diagram has, that it's constantly dynamic balance between one side and the other. And it's not, the goal isn't to achieve some perfect state of equanimity, but just to notice, like, what's really happening in our heart in that moment. And I chose to focus on equanimity. I'm just having a hard couple of days here in my family. We're dealing with some illness and just the usual stresses that then come from being kind of the sole parent for my child. And so it's not like I'm not in the happy, joyous mood, and I'm also not in the focused on, I don't know, the collapse of human civilization mood. I'm in the mood of that I know I'm sure everyone in the group has experienced at times where we're just holding a lot. And sometimes we're able to do so in a way that feels or looks, frictionless or effortless. And other times we fail at doing that. And so we do the work of kind of self-understanding and self-forgiveness. And I'm definitely in camp 2 on that one. I won't go into the details, but it's been it's not been the smoothest carrying of burdens on my side. So I'm noticing a lot of stirring up of emotion. And that for me, based on my meditation training, is a great opportunity to sit and to let go of a lot and to welcome in something about this attitude of hishtavut. I'm going to say one more thing before we sit about it. Chaim Vital tells this story attributed to a much older rabbi, but we don't know if that's true. Anyway, he tells the story that there's a master of Kabbalah who is accepting students, and someone comes up to him and says he'd like to be his student. And the master says he's passed all of his book learning. He's got a PhD in Jewish thought and he's rabbinic ordination or whatever. But the question is whether he has the heart wisdom to take on this path. And so the rabbi says, "Oh, well, have you, how have you, I think the word is probably in Hebrew, Baal, like mastered equanimity. But let's just say, do you possess equanimity? And such that when somebody praises you and somebody else says something cruel or unkind to you, do you feel the same way?" And the student answers very truthfully in a way that I really appreciate. And the student says, "No, I still feel something, right? I take in that response, that what was said, and I still have a feeling, an emotional response, but I don't say or do anything unkind. It doesn't affect my actions. I'm careful." This is me editorializing this next part. "I'm careful to notice my responses and not let them drive the bus of my actions." And the rabbi says, "That is great. You are very wise. You have understood it. And you're not ready for the advanced study of Kabbalah because you're still too much in the world." And I'm not taking the side of the story here. That's not what I would say, I don't think, to someone who wanted to come and learn. But I'm fascinated. I think it's fascinating that Chaim Vital tells the story this way, that there's a distinction between being in the world and being wise and being heartful. And maybe it's actually better from some perspective. The story doesn't say this, but I might say this, to have that relationship where we do feel things and we do have our responses, and maybe we're not separate from the world enough. Sometimes Kabbalah, especially in its pre-20th century formulations, can be a little bit luftmenschy, meaning a little bit in the air, like a little disconnected from our day-to-day lives. And maybe that was the right response from the rabbi in Chaim Vital's story. Or maybe Chaim Vital is actually making the same criticism or observation that I'm making, that maybe this is actually about that Kabbalah mystical speculation might not be the kind of path for everybody. And instead we might embrace a kind of human path where we do have our feelings and our responses, but we act kindly and justly, even though we're undergoing some difficult emotions. Anyway, I feel like that's a Kabbalistic Zen koan a little bit. It doesn't resolve neatly or easily, and I wanted to share it in part to affirm the kind of Jewish value of equanimity, and maybe, this is the last thing I'll say, in that story, even a little ambivalence around hishtavut itself, and where equanimity sometimes could even close us off from being in relationship in the ways that we want to be. Okay, that's my frame. I'm going to now invite us to, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to invite you to do the same if you like. At the very least, coming to a place of peace and attention. I involuntarily took a deep breath. I was going to guide that, but instead it happened anyway. So I'll take a second one. Just kind of taking a nice deep breath in and letting it out, and seeing what else there might be to let out or let go just for this moment, for these next 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I'm noticing still some movement in the body. One of the reasons I like to sit in the middle of the day instead of at the beginning is my body's accumulated all kinds of weird little tensions. Right now, you can't see it because it's off camera, but my legs are kind of crossed in a weird way around this chair. So before formally meditating, I'm going to change my posture a little bit. Now my feet are planted on the ground, and that actually feels a lot better. I'm also noticing my hands are a little bit clasped. So I'm just going to gently release that. Sometimes, as you know, if you've sat with me before, I like to not do any of what I just did. I like to just see what's going on first and not try to fix anything or change anything. But here I'm giving myself a little bit of a break. I'm setting up, noticing the tension is present in the mind. Chances are it's in the body. And so sure enough, there it was. So giving you a moment to each do that in your own ways. You might orient your attention to the sensation, the sit bones, contact between you and the chair or the sofa or the floor, grounding you, Adam, the earth creature, in the Adama, the earth, and bringing the body to something that feels like stillness. In that stillness, the movements of the breath naturally arise. In this practice, we don't need to manipulate the breath. I guess we took a deep breath at the beginning, but it's not like there are wonderful meditative practices of altering the breath or working with it as a spiritual tool. Here, we're not doing those. We're just noticing and cultivating that mind of witnessing, that spacious mind of awareness around the breath. So for me, I can feel the physical sensations of the breath at the chest, kind of expansion and contraction. And already without any direction, since after all, I had been talking about equanimity for 5 minutes, there's a little bit of that coming in already, just of the letting go of grasping. And in the act of witnessing or noticing the breath, there's equanimity built into it. Probably many, if not most of you know, in one of the core texts of mindfulness, the Buddha says, meditator notices if they're breathing in long, they notice I'm breathing in long. If they're breathing in short, they notice I'm breathing in short. No particular judgment about which kind of breath, just noticing what's present. And the Buddha then continues through all these different emotions that might be present and so on. So just in that act of noticing is itself some hishtavut, some equanimity. So what are you noticing in this moment? If that prompt gets a little drifty, you can always come back to the sensations of the breath. That's our anchor today. And we're noticing in this way that feels kind of clear, ideally. But notice how that equanimity is never totally clear. In a short sit like this, it's fine to add a little self-compassion to that noticing. It's a loving awareness, not just an awareness. In English, we have a more of a linguistic distinction between thinking and feeling than in either Sanskrit, Pali, or even in Hebrew. So loving awareness is really just awareness, but it's a whole awareness, holistic awareness, not just an intellectualized one. And there can also be more difficult emotions in noticing. If you're feeling a lot of restlessness, for example, or a lot of sleepiness, it could be hard to just notice. So if you're able to stay on the breath for 2 or 3 breaths, I'm going to invite you to come with me on a little journey of seeing what's in your heart at the moment. It could be some of the people who were brought to heart and to mind earlier, or it could be something, and it can be of any emotional quality. It could be delight or joy or anticipation or rooting for the Knicks. It could be any source of stress or pain or concern or empathy. It could be in a private, in your family. It could be for people in the world, for politics, for anything. Just whatever's actually there, what actually is present in the heart. And seeing if it's possible to relate to it with that same mindfulness that we applied to the breath a minute ago. So here's concern for a loved one. And it's almost like you're feeling two things at once, right? Because there's the concern, so that's what you're noticing. You're also noticing. That's the trick. That's the metacognition, the part of meditation that I think is so important. Not just me, but scientists think is that important. There can be real pain, real concern, real love, real excitement, real gratitude, and there can be a spaciousness of mind around it. This is what's true. This is what is. Try not to get too carried off into the story of what is. So if we're concerned, I'll stay with the, a loved one who is ill. Try, if you can, if you notice the mind running off and going into details, the future, what the doctor said, whatever, try to come back maybe first to the breath to anchor, and then bring the present moment emotion back to the center of your attention. Follow that? So if you get lost in detail, you come back, maybe anchor with the breath for a moment, and then, okay, here, what's up in my heart? Here's this concern or pain or whatever it is for you. And what's that experience like in the body in this moment? And the equanimity isn't about persuading yourself that you're okay with things going one way or another. It's not about persuasion or language. It's just about the quality of knowing and accepting, okay, this is what's true right now. This is what's in the heart. And that's okay. Not okay in the sense of, great, I totally accept everything that's happening in the world, my life, that's awesome. Not that sense of okay. Okay in the sense of, this is what it is. This is what's true. I can be with it. And in that mindfulness around it, that's where there's freedom. That's where there's equanimity. Hopefully you can't hear. There's even an annoying sound in the background where I am of a truck backing up. So that's a very trivial annoyance, right? But it took over my attention. So I recognize it, the sound, and my response, and that's okay, in that sense of okay. It is what it is, like the cliche says. That's what we mean by okay. I accept what is. And what is, or is, might be a translation for Yud He Vav He, the divine that surrounds and fills all things. This is how what is showing up right now. And that, I think, is the key, the connection between Hishtavut in a Jewish conception and whatever we use for the universe, God, the divine, goddess, Shekhinah, that it's coming closer to simply be with what is. So we'll sit with that for a minute and then we'll close. There's a famous line in the Psalms, Hine el Yeshuati avtach v'lo avchad, which is also said in the Havdalah ritual, that behold, Yud He Vav He, God, what is my salvation, is what saves me. I will trust and not fear. We know that this trust can't be a naive trust, that everything works out for the best, because it doesn't. Chaim Vital lived in the shadow of the Spanish expulsion. So when he wrote about Hishtavut, about equanimity, he knew that in this world, things don't always turn out for the best. But that trust, that equanimity, is a different kind of trust. It's knowing that I can be with the beautiful and the painful. That if even just for a moment or a few moments, I can cultivate that equanimity to balance out our very human engagement with the world, which we love. That is my blessing to you. I'm going to open my eyes and bring our sit to a close.
Thank you so much, Jay, for this beautiful practice. And let's seal it as we do each day, friends. Any of you who may be in mourning or observing a yard site at this time, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, we can seal the practice with that. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, I invite you to encourage you really please stay present to offer your compassionate support to those who are in mourning. And you can put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. Harry will share the words on the screen. And if you're joining me, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitgadal, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Yitama, Yibrach, Yiruteh, Yamlich, Malchuteh, V'chayechon, Yomechon, V'chayeh, T'chal Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'bizman Kariv, B'imru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Ra Mevarach, Ve'olam Ulamei Almaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, Yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei Kudsha, B'richu, La'ela, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nachamata, Da'amiran, Ba'alma, V'yimru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlama Olam Yishalaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'mramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'yimru, Amen.
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 Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, I hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll be led in practice by Rabbi Dan Lieben. And hope you can join us also on Friday. I'll lead us for the Friday sit as we sit together into Shabbat. Thanks to Harry Gilboa, as always, holding our tech space beautifully, faithfully, and with with equanimity. Thanks, Harry. And of course, we hope you'll stay with us. You can continue to sit with that beautiful guidance that Jay offered us today. You can turn the sound off on your device and give yourself the gift of a little extra stretch of practice, if that what feels like what you need right now, or you can join us for conversation. Um, and if you have a question you'd like to ask, you can put that in the chat. Just ask that you preface it by writing question, all in caps, and I'll try to keep an eye out for that and work your question into the conversation. Thanks to Harry. Harry has shared in the chat the link to Jay's website, but we also want to do a shout out Jay's Substack, which is really extraordinary. It's called Both And. Highly, highly recommend subscribing to that. Where Jay's brings expertise on a lot of things, the poly crisis, constitutional law, Supreme Court, psychedelics, Jewish spirituality, Buddhist spirituality, and I guess the next two. Maybe you have something to say about the next, Jay. I don't know, but I don't think we're going to get into that today. So once again, I'll keep an eye out for your questions, and please join us. Feel free to also just to share reflections on your experience with the chat in the chat today with your practice. Well, Jay,
I've got Lynn's here if you want, Mark.
Oh, sorry.
I've got Lynn's question ready to go. If you want.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Can equanimity really mean balance, not equal? If you are here, does that mean another class is coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no other class that I know of, but stay tuned, I guess.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think I love that question. I think, yeah, that it shares the root with equal, and I think it has, even as does the English word equanimity, right? It's you can see the word equal almost in it. But I think it's the same as holding our emotions in a balance without denying them. That it's, I think there's also, the balance about results, or the balance about feelings, right? So in the Chaim Vital story, there's two different models for how that works. One is I have my feelings, but I act. I don't let them dictate my actions and speech, which is kind of, as you can tell, kind of where I would like to hang out. But there is also that model of real non-attachment to results, and that's true in at least these two traditions I've talked about, Judaism and Buddhism. That's like there is this notion that it could turn out one way, the election could go one way, the election could go the other way, the next could win, the next could lose. There'll be healing, there won't be healing. There'll be sustainability and flourishing for my family, my children, or there won't be. So even on the very big ticket items, I think there's a vision of equanimity that's kind of, you know, I can be with both results. So I think it's a tough language. It's hard to language because I don't want to say I'm fine with both results. It's just to say that whatever happens, I can be here and I can be present and I can feel connected in that moment. And that I feel feels like uh, the way equanimity functions in my own life and practice. Where it's, yeah, a little bit like the serenity prayer, right? There's stuff that's just not up to us. And you know, is there the acceptance is the word in the serenity prayer, right? That
Right.
this, yeah, that this is that this is what is. Yeah.
Yeah, so boy, there was so much there, Jay. And I see the appreciation in the chat. I appreciate also. It was extremely helpful for me today. Just want to retrace the steps a little bit also, because that Chaim Vital, which what he's representing 16th century Kabbalah, and where it seems to be like the punchline there is um, espousing a spirituality that in some way, it's I don't even know if it's aspirational, but to transcend our human incarnation, right? To not even have the feelings or reactivity. Whereas in Chassidut, which follows, we have this idea of avodah b'gashmiut, which is to embrace the material reality and our physical reality, and to infuse it with the spirituality, which I think leads to that what you were just saying about yes, of course, if we're human, it would be it's virtually impossible not to feel something. Um, but then there's something that can happen that can influence how we relate to it and how
Hmm.
how we respond to it, right? And I'm thinking about the quote usually attributed to Viktor Frankl that no one can find out where Viktor Frankl wrote it about the space between stimulus and response. So I want to underscore something you said in your guidance, which was I think you said something like the Hishtadlut is baked in or it's built in here, which was this, and I want to help like highlight the distinction between it is what it is or it's okay right now versus resignation, right?
Hmm.
Um, because this is not a prescription here for passivity or resignation, actually. It's really just part of the process of getting to response, and it can alter our relationship with what's happening. Um, and I think that's really that's an important distinction and such a valuable insight, right? That's there. Um, so I want to bring in Barbara's question, which has to do with
Wait, can I do something what you just said before
yeah,
you do
sure,
that? Because I
please.
wanted to,
Yeah,
yeah.
please.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to. That's right. I think. Yeah, I think when I feel, but you know, when my students feel resignation or despair or apathy, apathy is
Mhm.
kind of a funny word in English, right? It just means no feeling, but that's not what apathy feels like. Apathy is a feeling, right?
Right.
Oh, I don't care. I give up. It doesn't matter. It's got a story built into it, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what I do. Nothing's going to change. You know, it's whatever. And even in the way I just gave that voice, you can feel the kind of negative emotional valence to it, right? There's sadness there also, even if the person who's apathetic doesn't want to admit it, but there is, right? So I think your point is important that resignation is not at all the same as equanimity, right? It
Right.
just as you can feel a kind of what I would call pseudo equanimity, which is really contentment and peacefulness. I'm not,
Hmm.
that's fine. Go for contentment and peacefulness, but it's not the same as hishtavut. It's not the same as equanimity, right? It's contentment and peacefulness or positive feelings, right?
Hmm.
Oh, I'm feeling totally equanimous right now. No, you're not. You're in a bubble bath. Like you're feeling good. You're right. Equanimity is not a bubble bath. Equanimity is that balanced state that's very, very clear, that doesn't have any happy feeling emotions or difficult feeling emotions in it. That's just the clarity of seeing what's true. I do think there's like a subtle pleasure in there. I could go off on that for a long time, but
Yeah.
it's not the same as contentment and bliss, and it's not the same as resignation or giving up.
Yeah.
Um,
To put the two cliches side by side, it is what it is. It's not the same as it's all good, right? Which is, uh,
Well, it's all good because so close to it's all God. Maybe I'm okay with that anyway. But
well, that's, yeah.
things. There's definitely not the sense, right? I mean, you can be a dedicated activist working 12 hours a day trying to change the world and still have equanimity around like, okay, here's how it should be. This is wrong. This is not, it's not just how I want it to be. Like, this is
Right,
how it should be,
right.
ethically, morally, right? And we're not there and we're going in the other direction. And that's not profoundly not okay. But I can be okay with it not being okay, meaning I can have a sense of equanimity and clarity around the situation as it is, even though I'm working so hard to change it. All right, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
I do want to bring Yud Hey Bob Hey back into this in a moment, but I do bring Barbara's question. When the discomfort is acute, and especially when it's physical, right? Physical pain, physical discomfort, physical Barbara's describing disequilibrium. Um, uh, can you speak to how to, I mean, it's the same, I guess it's doubling down on this really, but how to cultivate this kind of histabut slash equanimity when it's physical and so much less in our control.
Sure. And Cheryl put something similar to like this in the chat. She had the experience of kind of moving away from a difficult emotion because she was trying to cultivate equanimity, and it was that kind of spiritual bypass. So first, we always want our mindfulness to be trauma informed.
Hmm.
There's a bad way of teaching mindfulness. There are many bad ways of teaching mindfulness. One of which is you can sit with anything, you can be with anything, and just let the difficult thing happen. That is
Mm.
definitely not true. If there's a trauma history, also if there's an extreme physical pain, or if there's like trauma around the pain or something like that. So it's fuzzier, but there's no getting around having some discretion and discernment around it. So if you're getting close to a sensation, and it's whether it's emotional or physical, and you're getting this really strong no, or you're getting, if you know your body's response to like a trauma memory or history or something, and you feel like coming on, so yeah, don't get closer to it, right? That's the time to step back, shift back to the something else. Maybe it's the breath or something else, some other subject, and do the right thing, right? Mindfulness, even if it's with a teacher, even if it's one-on-one, it's fundamentally something happening in a less supported way, let's say, than a therapeutic conversation. So it's not for every situation. Um, so if you do that discernment and it feels like it's okay to move toward it, yeah, I mean, then you can learn a lot, right? Sure, then there could be a physical pain even that is accompanied by a story. Sometimes we use story as if story is not true. Stories can be true, right? The story could be, I have chronic pain. That is a story, but it could also be true, right? It's not so. The pain could come with a story, and you can see those two things distinct. And it's can be really productive to just be with the pain as physical sensations without the story. I'll just repeat again, not because the story is false. The story might be true,
Hmm.
but it could
Hmm.
be good to just be with the physical sensation. You can disaggregate the physical sensation, and it's just tingling or it's just pressure or something like that, and that can be really helpful because it arises all the time or frequently, and this is a wiser way to be with it. Likewise, to Cheryl's point, it could be a really good investigation. Like, am I not willing to bring up this heartbreak because I just want to get to some good thing that the teacher said, equanimity? Yeah, I mean, that's good to see that. And it could be interesting to kind of to have that presence of mind and seeing how the mind is working. That's already, you don't have to do anything more. It's worth it just for that, right? Just that insight into how the mind works. If everybody had that, I think we'd have a little less war in the world, right? Just seeing how we're triggered, and how we're being moved, and how we can be wise around that. And I'm not exaggerating. I think there would literally be less war if everybody had that infrastructure. So that's worth it. And then, yeah, if it's possible to go toward the emotion, you can see whether it's possible to have that spaciousness around it and give yourself a break either way, right? If there is, great. You're able to have that spaciousness around this very painful thing. And if not, okay, right? It's too painful for that. It's too hard. And that's fine. You then know that. right? And you've seen that in your experience, that this much is too much for me to hold with equanimity. So what I need to do, then you're like that student in the Chaim Vital story. I need to move back from the situation, or I need to have a moment to reset, or to reground, or whatever it is. That's skillful.
Yeah, all of that is incredibly valuable. Thanks for all of that. We just got a couple of minutes, but I just want to throw in to the mix. Our colleague Dan Alexander in the chat brought in the blessings, the traditional blessing that one says when you hear about a death, which ends with which Baruch Dayan Emet, blessed is the true judge. Which when I do that, sometimes we'll say that blessing at Kriya at a funeral when you make a tear in a garment or the ribbon that the funeral home provides, and I often will myself will translates that who gives us the strength to be with our truth, which is in hard truth, to have that moment of acceptance or surrender. But what I wanted to ask you, Jay, in the 2 minutes we have left, that you have not giving a lot of time to answer this one, but where the divine, where God, where the Shekhinah comes into this, because that is a blessing that is addressing God, and you brought in trust, bitachon, as distinct from equanimity, but something kind of flows with it, or is part of that, or that Hishtabu can translate into a sense of going with the flow of life or the universe. So I wanted to invite you to say if you can, just in the minute or two we got here.
Do you want me to stand on one
What
foot
what
while I answer?
Yeah, please, that'd be great. If you stand on one foot, explain the whole prayer right now, that'd be awesome. Um, well, what's God? Here's the question at the long this long wind up. What's God got to do with it?
Yeah,
Nice that moment.
if it's Rana or Rona, just put into the chat, Shiviti Adonai Lenegdi Tamid. I've set God before me. Always that has the same, he's Shiviti is again the same root
Yep.
there again
Right.
as Tishtavut. And sometimes there's a not well-known phrase in Theravada and Buddhism that calls nirvana, nibbana, the one fortunate attachment. Right? It's like, so right, attachment's like the bad thing in Buddhism, where you don't want to be too attached to anything, except for one thing. But it's a paradox because nirvana is not a thing, and so you can't actually attach to it. But it's the one fortunate attachment to the present moment, to letting go, to whatever that state is in which there's not, equanimity is like, again, in technical Buddhism, it's like the gateway to enlightenment itself, right, is equanimity. So it's like pretty much right there, high up there. And that to me is that joining, right? If there's Shiviti Adonai Lenegdi Tamid, that is like a Jewish flavor of equanimity, right? It's more devotional.
Mhm.
It has like the deity. It has, and many forms of Buddhism are more devotional than mindfulness, right? Where the Buddha is seen in similar ways. But it's more devotional. It's a little juicier, but it's also, I have set what is before me always, right? Here's what's true. This is what is. Here's the invitation to be with it, or see that I can't be with it, but here's the invitation. I can set this presentness before me always. And every moment is a moment of potential letting go and merging in.
All right. That was a minute. That was excellent, Jay.
Yeah,
Um,
I like to work
always
within parameters.
That's great. Always a treat to have you with us on the set, and maybe Harry could throw back in the chat. I can once again recommend everybody signing up for Jay's Substack. I think it was very good for us, Jay. Hope it was good for you. Um,
Absolutely.
and and hope everyone will stay safe and well and join us tomorrow to practice with Dan Lieben, everyone. And thanks to Harry for holding us together as always, and each of you for devoting your time to create this beautiful community of practice together today. Many blessings, everyone. Take good
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Be well.